Good afternoon, everyone. I am Nick Valentino, academic counselor in the Hajim Dean's office. We hope you are all doing well. Here at the Hajim Dean office, we know that the world is particularly complicated and overwhelming right now. I wanted to remind you that we have advisors here to meet you through Zoom throughout the whole summer. We'll always have at least one advisor that you can meet with. You can make an appointment through the link that I'll send below in the broadcast. But we want to make sure that, if you do want to talk about anything that's going on, whether it's school or it's school adjacent, we are here for you. We're having another show today. If you can't tell by the way I say the word accent, I am a native Rochesterian. One of the things that Rochesterians are proud of is that we're a city of innovators, previously called the World's Image Center because of Kodak and Xerox. Well, we're now innovating in a new way, though, through the Institute of Optics. So today's guest is Dr. Scott Carney, the director of the Institute of Optics. Dr. Carney holds a PhD in physics from the University of Rochester, is an optics professor, and is also an entrepreneur and co-founder of Diagnostic Photonics, Inc. Dr. Carney, did I get any of that wrong? Please let me know.
It's all right. It's all good. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on. And when I was, I get to advise students about optics as a major, and the more I learned about it, I do like how it does fit into hopefully Rochester's legacy through innovation. Do you think that's something that is somewhat on the mark?
Oh, absolutely. The optics in the Rochester area has a really long and storied history going back to even before the university was founded in the middle of the 19th century. This was a city where optics was booming. And it's funny because now a lot of kids come in and their parents say, "Are you studying optics?" And the kids, "Yeah." And they, "Oh, eyeglasses." And it used to be that was the case. That's really what it was. It was about eyeglasses. It's not about eyeglasses anymore. It's about lasers and integrated photonic circuits and optical computing and all kinds of funny quantum weirdness. But it all does start with industry in the city of Rochester. And the foundation of the Institute of Optics in 1929 was a response both to local industry need for well-trained optical scientists and engineers, and a national need for the national interest in security between the two world wars to establish expertise here at home in this really critical discipline.
So, one of the reasons why we started doing these videos is because we do have a fair number of prospective students and parents who just want a little bit more information on things. And some of our prospective students aren't as familiar with optics. I think part of because of the nature of its growth. So can you explain to them a little bit more about what the field of optics is beyond the eyeglasses and the idea of like light and color and lasers and what type of student is typically successful in optics?
Yeah, so it's one of the things that I really love about being in this discipline, that it's really broad. You mentioned my own background is in physics, and in fact, I was trained as a theoretical physicist. Did my PhD right here at the University of Rochester under Emil Wolf, who is a famous professor both of physics and of optics in the Institute. And my work was very much about optics, but also very much about the deep mysteries of the universe and how things work. On the other hand, I later in my career wound up working on very, very applied kinds of things and developed imaging techniques that were eventually spun out into a startup company that makes a surgical microscope. And so that's really the gamut we're talking about, that our graduates go on to work at Apple and Microsoft doing cutting edge stuff, bringing display technology into the 21st century. But we also have students that go to work at local companies like Optimax, making lenses and designing stacks. And we have one of our great industrial partners, ASML, is a company that makes sort of enormous optical components that go into the machines that make computer chips all around the world through photolithographic processing. And it's optics that makes the modern electronics world possible. In 2000, Jack Kilby, was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for developing the integrated circuit. Well, the integrated circuit, his breakthrough was essentially using a photographic technique to write the circuit patterns into a piece of semiconductor. And so it's been all optics ever since then.
In speaking with the undergraduates that are finishing or deciding to go into a graduate program or PhD
Mhm.
program, one of the overwhelming things was the amount of opportunities that they had and the level of responsibility given to someone right out of college. I always felt was, especially with optics, was particularly impressive. So is that the state of optics right now? The idea of I guess leaving with a bachelor's degree and then going into industry versus going on for additional education. What are your thoughts between the two with the state of the industry of optics now?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So certainly this May was a great test case for us because it's easy to see your kids go out and get jobs in a booming economy. It's quite another thing in the middle of a shutdown. We had in total 52 graduates this year. They all have jobs.
Hmm.
Let me modify that. They all have jobs or decided to go on to grad school.
Yeah.
So a few have chosen grad school, and I can say that it's a question of you get to the end of the road, you get to the end of the 4 years, and there's a decision to be made. And there are certain career paths that are, better served by continuing on to either a master's degree or PhD. And there are opportunities that are available immediately with the bachelor's degree. And I don't, there's no magic path there. Certainly for our students who are more interested in fundamental science, what really amounts to doing physics. Graduate school is often an attractive option, and graduate school either in optics or in physics or in another engineering discipline. A good friend of mine likes to point out that in the history of the Institute, we know of at least 2 graduates who left our program and then went to the seminary. So
Mm.
you just never know.
Yeah.
Um, but
I'm trying to find a corollary between the two.
yeah, I know it's all about seeing the light.
Yeah, I
And
guess it's true.
so we are really proud of the fact that we prepare our students for a very broad array of opportunities. We produce intellectuals and scholars, and because optics is omnipresent, we touch on really fundamental things. The theory of special relativity really has its roots in optics. The fact that light travels at the same speed in all reference frames. The theory of the modern quantum mechanical framework for understanding the universe really comes out of optics. It comes out of observing quantized spectral lines in atomic spectra. And of course, I've already touched on the wide array of technologies that depend on optics or explicitly optical. Our kids are ready to go out and take jobs and tackle problems and work in all of those areas. And whether or not you stay on for grad school, just it's a very individual decision. And we have kids who show up in their first year of undergrad saying, "I'm going to stay for the PhD," and man, they're out the door and working for a company after 4 years. We have kids who show up and say, "I just want to get my bachelor's degree and get out and get a job," and they stay on for the PhD and wind up staying on as professors. And then there are there's a wide gamut in the middle, and there are a bunch of kids who show up not even knowing that they wanted to study optics, who find their way over to us, and we convert them. So
I remember having a conversation with a former optics student, well, at least in optics, Brandon Zimmerman, who went on
yeah,
to get
yeah,
his
I know,
PhD,
Brandon.
and when I was asking him about it, when he was getting to the point of wanting to go to graduate school, he's like, "There's just still so much left that I need to know, and there's so much more I can do." And I think having that decision, we're really having the opportunity to have have a good chance to go either out to the world and get a good paying job, or to continue on to something that few people have been able to do at this point
Mhm.
comparatively. The optics is particularly exciting.
Yeah.
So one of the things I regret about there not being the in-person commencement is I like when Ed Hajim does his speech, the
Yeah,
4 piece speech.
absolutely.
The two things that I like about his speech, the first one is he said, if you can accomplish anything in this world if you don't care who gets the credit, which
Yep.
is something I'm trying to live by. But also like to catch your wave. And the idea is that find something that is interesting to you. And if you feel like it's going to get bigger and bigger. And a lot of the way the students feel they can do this is through entrepreneurship. So I
Yeah.
wanted to ask your feelings about entrepreneurship and how entrepreneurship has changed in the past 5 years.
Oh, yeah. That's a great question. It's a good point that uh, the field is changing on a 5-year timescale. Here in Rochester, we are home to the Luminate competition, which has seen a huge overrepresentation of institute graduates, and that's a early startup business competition that puts $100,000 in the hands of 10 companies and lets them compete for 6 months to see who's going to come out the other end with $1 million investment.
Wow.
And that's a pretty good launching pad for a company. Um, the institute itself has a really rich history. We counted up recently something like 250 companies that have either been started by institute alumni or faculty. About half of those companies are still around the Rochester area, and so we try to foster entrepreneurial thinking. I teach a 100 level course on engineering design theory, and that tends to lead very directly into entrepreneurial activities. That course was something I started back at my previous university, and in 4 semesters of teaching it, we spun out 4 companies. And I just think that as engineers, what we do necessarily proves itself out in the marketplace through things like startup companies. And the best entrepreneurs I've ever worked with have all been engineers.
Yeah, I guess if you are going to have a series of problems as an entrepreneur from the beginning that you have to overcome, being an engineer is probably a good start. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. And being an engineer is not really about technical things. Being an engineer is about bringing a certain ethos to problem solving, and that framework for thinking about problems, developing solutions, building a diverse team, proving out your solution, and always being willing to iterate, iterate, iterate. That's what being an engineer is really all about.
by confession, I am not an engineer. But one of the things that I have really enjoyed is being able to work with engineers, and it's having that process mentality, right? The idea is that we just have to keep refining the process, and it will eventually be good enough to move on to the next thing.
Right.
And I think that that's one of the things when I have families who say, "Oh, my son or daughter is a perfectionist. He or she wants to be an engineer." I'm like, "Well, hold on a second, because sometimes the answer is good enough, and the
Mhm.
problem is solved for as much as it can be." And I think there is definitely merit to that, especially when you're thinking about an academic path and not the overwhelming need to feel like you're always right.
I promise you, I don't know what right feels like, but
But
we get close enough.
yeah, yeah, and I think that that'll work. So I wanted to ask you, in the context of being the director of the Institute of Optics, what is something that has surprised you since you've been at UR and in your role as the director of optics?
Well, I have to admit, I was a little taken by surprise with the global pandemic.
Mm.
That's number one. Um, but one of the I have to say that having helmed a department of optics now, I'm a little surprised that there aren't departments of optics at every serious university in the world.
Mhm.
Our students go on to these amazingly successful careers, and our industrial partners, currently, embodied in the form of our industrial associates program, um, they love us, but they're always a little bit mad at me because we don't produce enough students for them.
Yeah.
They're sort of fighting it out in the halls over hiring our kids, and then they really get annoyed when we keep them for graduate school. And so uh, I'm a little surprised that everyone doesn't have an optics department with an optics degree. That's been a revelation.
Yeah, and you're it's like as you're saying, we have what we're working towards is being able to have those students be presented with that opportunity, from day one. One of the things that that I do, and that some of the people watching don't, is that my primary responsibility is working with underrepresented students
Mhm.
and veteran students. And one of the things the optics department, under your direction, has been able to do is really reach out and have this be posed as an option for underrepresented students. That is something I've always appreciated, because you know the easiest way to reach these students is to try to meet them in their space and to
Mhm.
talk to them about how this is something, even though they're unfamiliar with it, is an opportunity. So that is something I've always appreciated that your department has done.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, we see our pool of underrepresented students as a pool of underutilized talent, and
Mhm.
it's been an enormous opportunity for us to reach out into the community and make kids aware that this is a wonderful career opportunity. It's intellectually stimulating. It's incredibly rewarding. In the Rochester area, especially for kids coming out of local schools, if you want to stay in the Rochester area and be close to family, and study optics. Come study optics. There are jobs here.
And the with the underrepresented students, they a lot of times they'll ask, they say, well, how does diversity contribute to like a science in a lab? And what I tell them is, it's going back to problem solving. Like, having your unique world experience
Mhm.
puts you in a position to solve problems different than other people, and that is going to inherently give you value, as you go into the program and learn more and more and more.
Yep, you bet. In fact, that's sort of day three of the undergrad engineering design course I teach. Um, Team building. It doesn't do you a lot of good to go out and find three other people who are exactly like you. You already got you.
Yeah.
And we know in the engineering world that diversity of experience, thought, perspective, and ideas is critical to a successful engineering team.
And I know that you have, extensive experience at this point now working in advising undergraduates and graduate students. I wanted to ask you, what is the best advice you have ever received?
Oh, that's a great question, and it's one I don't really have an answer to because it's not so much that I've received great advice; it's that I've watched great people go about their work and I've paid attention. The best advice I've gotten hasn't really been advice; it's been role modeling, and so I've had that in my career, starting in middle school with a math teacher who modeled for me what real intellectual curiosity looked like and was willing to work with me. And that continued right up through my postdoctoral mentor who modeled for me how to be a theoretical physicist with an interest in making a difference in medical technology. And in every case, it wasn't that I could point to uh, something someone told me. I could point to watching someone do something and deciding that I could do it too. And so in the Institute, we try to do that for our students. We have a lot of different people who can point the way to a lot of different opportunities.
It's excellent, because I like the idea of this, being able to make the determination for yourself, what kind of example you want to follow. In this case, if you see somebody who also is happy at this too, right? The idea that it's getting some joy out of this, I think that's a factor. So with that, we have a bunch of students who are coming into a degree of uncertainty.
Mhm.
I wanted you to, both returning in and students who are going to be first year students, what is your advice to them when as they will be here in a few months?
Sure, sure. Wear your mask.
Yep.
Uh, Keep 6 feet away from people, and be ready to engage in new formats. We are really finding that even though we're all a little shaken by the current state of the world in so many ways, um, there are opportunities here, and so you know I have found in teaching that when one channel is turned off, another channel becomes stronger, and we've seen that again and again in what we're doing. So we take that to the way we interact with our students, but I want my students taking that to the way they interact with each other. And so there are going to be challenges ahead this fall. But we're going to hopefully all be on campus and doing labs. And I suspect we'll be delivering lectures online, but we'll be getting together to solve problems. And that added time together in small groups is an opportunity to really interact at an individual level with the faculty and the instructional staff that you might not have had before. So be open to those opportunities and take advantage of them when they're there. Don't expect the sort of traditional means of distribution of knowledge to be the only thing that's put in front of you. Be open to the new ideas.
And I think that is especially applicable to the idea that we get a lot of people attracted to our open curriculum, right? And that it is
Yeah.
a benefit. In engineering, we're a little bit more limited because there are the requirements that you have to fulfill and the order in which you have to fulfill them. But one of the biggest strength is having such good faculty available, and also doing research.
Yeah.
Either concurrently with their work or their teaching, or especially during the summer. Our last guest, Sean Rodriguez, he said when he got here, he said, I was just overwhelmed at how smart everyone is.
Yeah.
And with this, as we have the students coming back and have the students, wondering, what's the state of school going to be like, it's good to be able to tell them we literally have some of the smartest people in the world trying to figure this out for you.
Yeah.
And so what we're hoping is that like the accessibility of faculty is something that is going to, be one of Rochester's strengths for, as long as we do this.
Yeah, and Rochester broadly, and the Institute in particular, has a rich history of involving undergraduates in research. I think that's going to continue. For me, it's kind of an exciting time because the bulk of my work is theoretical, and so it lends itself rather well to distance learning, and so my market value has gone up. But we've also just reopened most of the labs in optics, and people are back in the laboratory in a carefully planned and controlled situation, doing work in the labs, doing research. And so that's continuing at pace, and I expect by the fall, as we continue through New York's various phases of reopening, that we will have everyone back doing the work of making more optics.
Excellent. That sounds wonderful. And I am behind this project. We're all behind this project, and we want to know that, to you watching, that we're doing everything we possibly can to make sure that we're ready. So Dr. Carney, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. What we're going to do too, as well, is put more information about Dr. Carney and more information about the optics program. And if you'd like to get in contact with them, we'll have contact information too. I realize it is, watching these videos that we were doing, I always seem to end. I don't know if it's not planned by, we hope to see you soon, but I appreciate your words, especially where I should change. We're looking forward to seeing you soon.
Great. Thank you, Nick. And for any students watching, I'm always happy to chat with students, whether you want to just shoot me an email or arrange a time to talk. We are excited about our discipline. We're excited about the research we do, but we're at a university because we're excited about students. And so I'm happy to hear from any of you anytime. So thanks, Nick.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you for watching. This is Hajim Advising Live, and we will be back again next week. All right. Thank you.